Hi everyone and welcome back to my channel. My name is Cindy. I'm a fifth year MD PhD student, and for the last couple years I've been making content on social media helping premeds navigate the application process as well as share my unfiltered experience as an MD PhD student. In my last video, I outlined the entire roadmap for applying to medical school if you're planning on applying this year, and in that video I mentioned that January is the perfect time to get started on your personal statement so you can let it marinate and refine it throughout the first part of the year. Now, what I didn't tell you guys was how to actually begin on your personal statement, and it might feel really tempting to wait until that moment of inspiration hits to actually begin. However, I'm here to give you guys some tough love and just say that that moment of inspiration may never come. So if inspiration is what you're waiting for to get started, you might end up waiting a little bit too long. But I'm also here to provide some encouragement and reassurance. If you're applying to medical school this cycle, you probably have enough experiences to write a compelling personal statement. What you might not have, and what might be the reason that you're waiting for inspiration, is that you just don't know where to begin on how to turn all of those experiences into a compelling narrative. So in this video, I'm going to help you guys do three things. The first is to understand what the AMCAS personal statement is actually asking you to do. The second is trying to figure out your core why medicine narrative. And lastly, help you guys brainstorm in a systematic way that actually makes drafting the personal statement and perhaps even future essays a little bit easier. By the end of this video, hopefully you'll feel a little bit less paralyzed about how to begin and actually start getting some words in the document. And with all of that out of the way, let's begin. To kick everything off, I want to talk a little bit about what the AMCAS personal statement actually is and go over the prompt with you guys. And I think this is just important so that we're all on the same page and we're all trying to accomplish what the AMCAS personal statement actually wants us to accomplish. I read something a while ago that has really truly stuck with me, and is the fact that admissions committees actually rarely read personal statements that truly stands out simply because they read so many of them. On the flip side, however, even though admissions committees rarely read statements that, are truly unique, really bad ones will definitely hurt you. I don't really have a source for this, and unfortunately I also don't remember where I read this, so take this with a grain of salt. However, if this was true, it wouldn't necessarily surprise me because admissions committees probably read hundreds, if not thousands, of essays every year, and many people on the admissions committees have served on the admissions committee for multiple years. And so what's the takeaway from me telling you all of that? The takeaway is just that you don't need to go into starting your personal statement thinking, oh, I have to write the most dramatic, the most unforgettable personal statement story of all time. Because one, admissions committees have honestly read so many essays that I think it's really difficult trying to write something that they've never read before. So I don't think that should be your goal. And two, I don't think you have to be like an astronaut or an Olympian or something like that in order to get into medical school. Of course, having extraordinary experiences certainly can only help you. However, I personally consider myself a pretty average human being with pretty average human being experiences, and I still got into medical school. So yeah, it is possible for us non-Olympian, non-astronaut, I don't know, who is that one guy who is like super accomplished? Johnny Kim. Navy SEAL, Harvard doctor, flight surgeon, astronaut. I bet he had an extraordinary personal statement. Okay, but back to my point. In my opinion, an effective and clear personal statement should do two things. The first being giving a good impression to the admissions committee, because this is the first time they are going to see who you are beyond just your MCAT and your GPA. And the second is answering the question, why medicine? Basically, by the end of your essay, it should be pretty clear that you want to be a doctor, and your reasons for wanting to be a doctor should also be pretty clear. And to make this a little bit less abstract, let's go through the AAMC prompt together. Consider and write your personal comments essay carefully, as many admissions committees place significant weight on this essay. Here are some questions you may want to consider when writing this essay. Why have you selected the field of medicine? What motivates you to learn more about medicine? What do you want medical schools to know about you that has not been disclosed in other sections of the application? In addition, you may wish to include unique hardships, challenges, and obstacles that may have influenced your educational pursuits, insights into significant fluctuation in your academic record that are not explained elsewhere in your application. There's quite a bit of instructions here, but really the first half of this prompt just really boils down to why medicine, why do you want to be a doctor, what kind of experiences have brought you here today on this path to becoming a physician. In the second half of this prompt, they also address the fact that you can include unique hardships or challenges that you faced, as well as significant grade fluctuations. My advice with this is that if these challenges and hardships are relevant to your overarching why medicine narrative, I would include it. However, if they don't quite fit your answer of why you want to be a doctor, I would actually include it in the other impactful experiences essay. That's a whole other essay, and not every applicant will have a other impactful experiences essay, but that's definitely another space you can kind of put unique challenges and hardships that you've had if they don't directly fit into your narrative of why you want to be a doctor. They also say you can include insights on any significant academic challenges or grade fluctuations in your personal statement. But once again, I feel like you should try to prioritize answering why medicine in this essay. And unless discussing those grade fluctuations kind of directly ties into that narrative, I would probably put it into other impactful experiences. And just as a side note for all of you guys, I know what it was like to be really anxious about the application process, but when they say significant academic fluctuations, they really do mean like significant academic fluctuations. Like an A minus after a semester of getting all A's is not a significant academic fluctuation. And even for me, I actually had a C plus my freshman year of college. I wouldn't consider that a significant academic fluctuation. It was more just kind of like a blip in my GPA. It only happened one time. It was early on in college. And I don't know if this is reassuring for anyone. I actually never addressed it in my application, and it also never came up at any point during the application process. And so to recap all of this, it's okay if you don't have the most dramatic, unforgettable Pulitzer Prize winning personal statement. In fact, that actually shouldn't be your goal in writing the personal statement. You should focus on addressing why you want to be a physician, and of course, use your experiences to back up why you want to be a physician. I understand that while that sounds simple enough, okay, just explain why I want to be a doctor, trying to do that clearly, succinctly, and using your experiences to back up your rationale of why you want to be a doctor, all in under 5,300 characters, can be difficult. I get it. So I'm going to be giving you guys two kind of brainstorming exercises that you can do in your own time to help you kind of further refine and solidify your ideas before you start getting words down on paper. These exercises will be linked down the document below, and I also have additional ones that can kind of help you get started on reflecting and thinking about your pre-med experiences. If you want to do just the ones I'm talking about, or just like pick and choose which one you want to do, totally fine. There's no rules to this. You can even just start drafting if you want, or do the brainstorming and drafting side by side. I personally just have always found it helpful to do a little bit of brainstorming, answer some prompts, get some thoughts down on the page, and potentially see, oh, I like this paragraph here. I can try to adapt that to my personal statement, et cetera, et cetera. And also, so I'm not staring just like at a completely blank Word document when I begin. All right, so the first brainstorming exercise I want you guys to do is reflect on your activities. So first, I want you to take out a piece of paper, an empty Word document, whatever, and start making a list of all of your activities in undergrad, your gap years, all the way to this current year, basically. They can be related to medicine or not, just everything you've did ever, like in terms of an extracurricular activity. If you have a resume or a CV lying around that's updated, cross-reference that and make sure you get everything. Once you have this list of activities, now I want you to go through each activity one by one. And then for each activity, I want you to write 1 to 2 sentences about what the activity was and what your role is in that activity, as well as 1 to 2 sentences on how that activity was transformative. Pausing there, what do I mean by transformative? I want you to think about how that activity has changed you. So what did you learn from the activity? How did you grow from it? Were there any specific experiences or instances from the activity that changed your worldview or changed how you thought about something? And also, did that activity give you any insight on wanting to be a physician or any insight on what being a physician would be like? And as a note, as you're doing this, you do not have to force activities to be related to medicine. Some activities can just be hobbies and they can just be for fun and exist as an activity unrelated to medicine. That is fine. And other activities can also be unrelated to medicine, but help you develop skills like problem solving or leadership. In general, I just wouldn't worry too much about how everything is going to fit together at the end at this point in time, because again, You're just brainstorming. You're just getting some thoughts down on paper. You're just reflecting on the activities you've done since undergrad. And also on that note, since we're brainstorming, nothing has to be polished. It can just be bullet points at this stage. As an example, one of my experiences in undergrad was volunteering for Crisis Text Line. And so as I was reflecting on this activity, I literally had bullet points like mental health, active listening, being able to help others while not being in the same room. And on that last bullet point, I actually put like a little question mark next to it because I was like, this is kind of half-baked. I don't know where I'm going with that. I also put some bullet points down on empathy fatigue and self-care as just potential things to explore, but I wasn't so sure about. And again, at this point, it's all brainstorming, anything goes. Just put stuff down on a piece of paper. What I'm trying to say is that this activity, at least in the beginning, can actually be quite simple, just trying to think about how this activity helped you grow. And then later on, as you expand it into sentences, as you expand it into paragraphs, you can think more about the why medicine aspect of it and whether or not it kind of fits into that overall arching narrative of why you want to be a doctor. And I do recommend, of course, going through this exercise several times. And of course, by the end of it, actually, you will have something like an activity section that you can end up using. So it's definitely a worthwhile exercise that I recommend doing. All right, so that's kind of like the brief brainstorming activity on activities. But now let's zoom out a little bit and talk about like the why medicine of it all. Let me preface this by saying that this is not the only way to do this, and it is not the only way to figure out your why or your central thesis for your personal statement. But I did personally find it to be super helpful, so I wanted to share it with you guys. Because if I asked you right now to pause this video and pretend like you're talking to me face to face and we're in an interview situation, and I asked you to summarize in one sentence why you want to be a physician, what would you tell me? I think for me, at least, when I was at that point of just starting to draft my personal statement, if you asked me to define my why in one sentence, I would have had a difficult time. Because even though I did have, like a pretty good idea of why I want to be a physician, I wasn't at that point of being able to distill it down yet to just one or two sentences. And I also think for a lot of us, it boils down to that really cliched answer of, I like science, I want to help people. And there's nothing wrong with that statement. I actually think that is true for so many of us in medical school and people who want to pursue medicine. However, it just kind of seems half-baked and lacks the specificity that one would want in a personal statement. And so that's where this next exercise comes from. And I thought it was pretty helpful for kind of refining my why. And instead of trying to directly answer, why do you want to be a doctor? I want to turn it back on its head and actually ask you, what kind of physician do you want to become? It can be kind of a concrete quality, like what kind of medicine you want to practice, what kind of patient population you want to serve, or it can be something a little bit more abstract. So for example, you can say, oh, I want to be a doctor who really takes the time to listen to patients. Something like that. I'm just kind of pulling it out of my head right now. And so once you have that quality or potentially qualities in mind, ask yourself, why is this the quality I have chosen? What led me to choosing this quality, and what led me to this vision of wanting to be this kind of physician? What experiences have I had that shaped this goal to want to be this kind of physician? And lastly, why does being this kind of physician matter to me? So for example, if the quality you chose is that you want to be a physician who practices in a rural area, in a community hospital, what were the experiences that informed that? And why is that something that matters to you? If, for example, you chose that you want to be a physician that values empathy above all else, what were the experiences that led to that conclusion? And feel free to brainstorm and write as much as you want as you're kind of exploring these threads and what matters to you as a person. But at the end of it all, I want you to try to summarize it in no more than 3 sentences. A helpful sentence starter that could help you get there is, my experiences in blank led me to my desire to be a physician who blank. You don't have to use this exact starter, but this could help you keep it concise if you wrote a lot and you're trying to synthesize it all in a succinct way. And you can kind of use this starter as a kind of guiding post for structuring your personal statement. So let me give you guys an example of what I kind of wrote out in my early stages of brainstorming. Obviously, this is not perfect, but it was actually pretty close to what actually ended up being in my personal statement. I envision myself as a physician scientist who continues to leverage her statistics background in academic research while helping patients and their families. The ability to make an individualized impact as a physician And to bring meaning through statistics, through clinical applications, is what ultimately draws me to medicine. And then I refined it a little bit more and ended up with this version. My experiences in clinical research and crisis counseling led me to my desire to be a physician who not only uses aggregate data to advance medicine, but also one who effectively balances that with care and respect for individual patients. And so that sentence actually became a backbone to my personal statement. Like, I kind of knew by that point that I wanted to talk a little bit about crisis counseling, and I also wanted to talk about research. And this kind of brainstorming exercise in this sentence helped me figure out how to integrate them. Yours will look different because you have different experiences, you will have different whys. Yours should look very, very different from mine. The whole point of this exercise is try to help you clarify your narrative and potentially narrow down what kind of experiences you would want to include in your personal statement. And so now that you've thought about your experiences and kind of the overall big picture of why medicine, you can officially start drafting your personal statement if you want. I will be posting a video about kind of your first draft of your personal statement, working through the introduction, body paragraphs, conclusions next week. And so watch out for that. I will link it down in the description once it's up. And again, I will be linking a bunch of writing exercises and prompts down below to help you try to get some thoughts down on paper. I do highly recommend doing them, and I did do all of them when I was applying to medical school. And a lot of the stuff that I wrote early on in the brainstorming process actually made it to my secondaries. So it's kind of like doing more work ahead of time to save you some of the work later on. If you guys haven't already seen my video about the medical school application cycle and what to expect each step of the way this year, it will be linked right here. And I'll see you guys back here next week on our next discussion with the personal statement, where I'll be walking you guys through the introduction, the body, and conclusions, and all of the mishaps that can potentially happen in your first draft. If you have any lingering questions about all of this, please leave me a comment down below in the comment section, and I'll try to answer it the best I can. And with all of that said and done, good luck on your personal statement, and I'll see you guys back here again next week for drafting. Bye, guys!